And it doesn't have any implications for off-street loading or unloading of vehicles. And it's not a new development, so integration into the existing landscape through design features such as vegetative buffers or retention of open space is not relevant. And the rest of these are for larger scale developments. This is a deck, so I, J, K, and L are all irrelevant to this special permit.
Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mark, you're approved.
What do I have to tell my contractor?
So there's a 20-day appeal period, but that doesn't start until the date that this decision is filed with the town clerk. So normally that takes about a week. We'll have to draw straws as to who's going to actually write the decision. But usually it's about a week, and then there's a 20-day appeal period. Your contractor can begin work within those 20 days at your own peril if there were to be an appeal, or you can wait till the 20 days is up, and then you pick up your special permit from the city clerk.
Okay. That's it? And he could pick it up? You just
I
need
would
to know
assume
the
so.
address and my name.
I would think so.
Yeah, and you do need to file it at the Registry of Deeds.
Oh, right, sorry. Thank you.
Say again?
You need to file the copy of the decision and the appeal notification that says there's been no appeals within that 20-day, and then you would file that at the Registry of Deeds, and then it takes effect.
What will the permit that I pick up, I have to file with the Registry of Deeds?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool.
After you get the notice saying that there's been no appeals.
The notice from the town, the zoning board of appeals, that gets filed. The Registry of
The
Deeds.
city clerk's notice plus the decision.
And then the building permit is entirely separate.
Is this going to be spelled out in writing?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then I can.
Yeah, that's the thing that we have to write up. That will take approximately a week.
And that'll tell me what I have to do next.
Yes.
And then if I have any questions, I can. Okay. That's it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, we're going to move to the appeal from Douglas Russell, 9 Fort Hill Road, East Hampton. The public hearing has been continued for 2 meetings. We continued it. We took a vote last meeting. We were unable to make a decision, so we reopened the public hearing, and we have a legal notice.
I just wanted to clarify, because I think there was some confusion at the end of our last session on this about what happened with the vote, and I just wanted to clarify that it takes a vote of 4 to overrule a decision of the building inspector, and it takes a vote of 3 to uphold the decision of the building inspector. And because there were 5 of us voting, and it was 3 to do the thing that we needed 4 votes for, and 2 to do the thing that we needed 2 votes for, is why we couldn't reach a decision. We did not have enough votes to take either action. And I think there was some confusion about, you voted and the vote failed, shouldn't that mean the other thing? And it didn't, because you need to have a certain number of votes to take one action and a certain number of votes to do the other action, and we did not have enough votes to do either one. So.
Very good explanation.
Okay, and I want to note for the record, a memo from the Corporation Council concerning closing the hearing and then reopening it. I won't read the whole thing. But I think what we did, in his opinion, was legal. So before we reopen the public hearing and take any testimony tonight, last meeting we failed to get 4 votes. We only have 4 sitting members tonight. Does the board want to reopen the public hearing and take more discussion tonight? We have a special meeting scheduled for next Tuesday night in this room at 6:30.
If we need it.
If we need it. Would the board like to reopen the hearing tonight, take more testimony, reopen the hearing, and just take a vote? Or would the board like to continue the public hearing until our meeting next Tuesday, understanding that based on the vote we took last month, we have 2 to overturn the building official's decision sitting and 2 to not overturn the building official's decision. We need 4 votes. Does anybody have an opinion?
As in, is anybody likely to change their mind from last month? I mean, no.
What?
The planning board has now issued their decision, and they've issued a new special permit, an amended special permit. I don't know if that changes things for anyone. I don't think it changes the vote for me.
It doesn't change the vote for me, but I don't know if we want to discuss that more. I don't think we have 4 votes tonight. So I would just recommend that we continue this hearing for Fort Hill until next Tuesday night at 6:30, when we have a possibility of achieving 4 votes.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think it sounds like it'll be difficult for us to get 4 people
Yeah.
to vote to uphold it, or to overturn it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, to overturn it.
So, yeah, I think
Or
having
three, or 3 to go the other way.
Or-
Yeah.
or
I'm not
3, right.
interested in, I'm just not interested, so.
Okay, can I have a motion to continue the hearing again until Tuesday, December, do we have a date?
It's, I believe, the 15th?
15th? At 6:30 in this room.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, Fort Hill neighbors. It's continued till next Tuesday night. Okay, next item are,
You know, I just want to note for the record on this that the reason that there are only 4 of us sitting tonight is because of a work commitment for one of the members of this board. And that sort of thing does happen from time to time when you have a volunteer citizen board. And, you know, we do our best to meet regularly, but of course, people's jobs need to take precedence from time to time. So,
Margaret, may I ask you a question? Do you know what the three votes needed for upholding the decision comes from? Because I only know about the 4 to the supermajority needed to overturn.
yeah.
I thought it was 4 also, so I'm not
Well,
gonna,
it's 4 to overturn. It's only 3, it's 3 to uphold, but I don't,
Well, it's 4 to overturn. It's, the 3 are,
I thought it was,
Then
you
what
just
if-
have to take action, and you need 3 votes to take an action.
we always need 3 votes to take an action, is the answer.
Okay, so the
Thank you.
action could be, we didn't vote to overturn, and therefore the decision is that it's not overturned.
right.
Okay.
Yes.
It wouldn't have to be we take action, our vote is to uphold it. It could be that.
Yes,
Okay.
that's true.
Okay, thank you.
We need 3 votes to take an affirmative action, but in the case of the affirmative action being to overturn the building inspector, we need 4 votes.
Mhm.
So,
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda. Bonnie Prosiak Harrison, 8 Ballard Street. Why don't we let people leave the room and then we'll start. Okay, this is another appeal of the decision of the building inspector. So again, if we're going to uphold his decision, we need 3 votes. If we're going to overturn his decision, we need 4. So that means all members. Okay, Bonnie, would you like to explain to us your issue, please?
Yes, on September 2nd, my letter to you was
Can you
very...
come up to the podium and start with your name and address for the record?
My letter that I sent you was very explanatory, but I'll go through the whole process. On September 2nd, I went in to see the building inspector, Joe Weidenkevitz, with my brother because he was obtaining a permit for his home. And while I was there and he was filling out the forms, I said to Joe that I have an existing chain link fence around my yard now on Ballard Street, and since 1984, and I wanted to replace a section on the short side, the north side of the property. And I says, I want to replace it with an 8 vinyl privacy fence. Do I need a permit? And he says, no. So then, as I was talking with him, another man walked in, wanted information about a fence, and asked if his daughter needed a permit for a fence. And again, Joe says no. He says, well, if I don't need a permit, he says, do I still have to put the fence, the good side facing the butters? And Joe said yes. And the guy said, well, even if it's the electric company? And Joe told him, unless the electric company agrees to that. So then my brother finished doing his paperwork, and as Joe was telling him where he would pick up his permit and everything, and as we were walking out, again, I looked at Joe and I said, so 8 vinyl fence is okay without a permit? Joe says, that's correct. So then my brother and I left. So I proceeded to have the fence installed. And then 19 days later, 20 days later, he came next door to the property that was being flipped. And I guess that's when he saw the fence. And he came over to my door and he says, you have an illegal fence. And I says, wait a minute. I says, you told me, number one, I didn't need a permit. And number two, I specified it was an 8 privacy fence. And I says, are you sure I don't need a permit? And he says, I says, you told me, no, I didn't need a permit. I says, and now you're telling me I have to rip it down? And he says, well, he says it's illegal. And he says, I'll come back with the paperwork. And he came back and served me with paperwork. And so here I am, I'm appealing it because I was very misguided and misled by him. And my brother was there, he heard every word that he said to me. And he said no. And never told me anything about not being able to have it or put it up or anything like that. So I'm appealing his
What company installed your fence?
Fairview fence out of Fairview, Chicopee. I have pictures of it.
Okay, no, I've been by it, I've seen it. Because I had a new vinyl fence installed at my house 2 years ago, which I got a permit for, and all 3 fence companies that I interviewed knew East Hampton's regulations on fences, heights, locations, etc. I'm surprised you had a fence company that didn't. Most installers do.
He asked me, the installer asked me if I got a permit. And I told him no. And he says, well, so it's okay to just put this up? And I says, well, according to the building inspector, yes. I says, he told me I didn't need a permit.
Okay, well, there are
And the
two,
same day, he told this other man he didn't need a permit.
well, there are 2 issues here. One is no building permit, and you do need a building permit fence. And the other is the height of the fence. A fence on your side property line, which yours is on your side, can be a maximum of 6 feet only. You can only have 8 feet on a rear property line. So there are 2 issues. And
Well,
I
I feel
don't
he
think.
created those issues.
Well, I can't speak for that. I mean, I just think that there might have been a misunderstanding on your part. And on this case, I couldn't vote to overturn the building official because we would be saying that you don't have to comply with the same regulations as everybody else does. In your letter, you commented on your neighbors and the problems with your neighbors. That's unfortunate for you.
Well, I
But-
understand that.
But the problem is that land use regulations have to be objective. And if we started letting certain people do things because they had objectionable neighbors, then it becomes subjective. And that's nothing that we can control at all. So the rules are written so that everybody complies with the same set of rules,
Well,
regardless
then
of
why
the
did the building not,
circumstances.
why did the building not tell me the rules? And I wasn't the
When
only-
did you order your fence? If you went in on September 2nd, it takes a lot longer normally
It was,
for- to- so
installed
you
on
had signed
September-
So you had signed the contract with your fence company before you went and asked if you needed a permit?
No, I called them. I called them.
Because it usually takes more than 2 weeks lead time to have a fence installed.
September 15th is when I had the fence put in.
But you talked to the building official, according to you, on September 2nd.
That's correct.
So you had already ordered the fence before you talked to the
No,
building
they
official?
had the fence there. They had the fence on hand.
Well, that just seems a very rapid turnover to find out about a fence and then have it installed. Just in my experience with having a
Because
fence
it's
put in.
not, it's not very long. It's just on the short side of the property.
I know, but I
And I mean, I was very misled by him. I was very specific when I talked to him. My brother was there. He heard the whole thing. And then he told the other man that came in, who wanted information about a permit for his daughter's fence, that he didn't need a permit either. So where are the standards here? 2 people in his office on the same day, same time, asking about fencing, and he told both of us we didn't need a permit.
Well, I can't address that.
Yeah, and I'm not actually even sure whether we need to, because I'm totally willing to believe that he gave you the information that you're reporting back that he gave you, but I don't know, like, what we can do because of the fact that there's not, like, it'd be one thing if this was, like, there's a lot of things in the zoning ordinance, like you were here for the first guy with his deck, so he wants to do something that's not, like, allowed under the ordinance, but what is allowed under the ordinance is for him to ask and then get permission, and we can give him permission if certain criteria are met. But with this fence thing, there's not actually a mechanism in the ordinance for us to give you permission. And so, I mean, I think, like, complaining about the fact that you feel like the building inspector gave you bad information and perhaps, I don't know, maybe like complaining to the mayor, I don't, like, I think it's, like, legitimate to complain about him giving you bad information, but in terms of allowing you to keep your fence, I don't think that we have the authority to do that, because there's not, like, the zoning ordinance doesn't give us authority to do that. But yeah, I totally believe that that's what happened to you, and I feel really, really, really bad. But I just,
Well, he must have been having a real bad day, because he told 2 of us we did not need a permit. 2 separate individuals.
yeah,
I mean, I spent extra money
right.
to have that fence put up.
Right.
If I knew I couldn't put it up, I could have saved myself $1,000.
Right. No,
And now I have to suffer because he's not doing his job correctly?
I mean, I think that where Linda was going at first is also a reasonable thing to do too, which is calling the company that installed your fence and saying, you know, why is it that you were, I mean, an 8-foot fence is really high. Like, it's not, there's nowhere in East Hampton.
Did you go by the property?
No, I haven't been by your.
Would you like to see what it looks like? Because there's trees and bushes and everything around
But
it.
it doesn't
Right,
change the
what I
fact
mean-
that it's 8 feet.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like,
Well, then is the building inspector going to pay to have it taken down and replaced?
I mean, you could certainly complain to the mayor and see whether there's some recourse that way. I just don't think the recourse is with us.
Yeah, and
Like, and I fully support
Well, then why
your
am I
right to do that.
appealing to you if you can't give me the answers?
Well, because often when there's been a mistake, either, like, the building inspector sometimes makes mistakes, right? Like,
Yeah,
this is
2
case
in
in
one
point.
day.
Right, but if he'd made a mistake the other way, like if he'd given you, like if, I'm trying to think of like an example here, but like, you know, if the person hadn't come to the building inspector initially, let's just say like they did whatever it is that they did, and the building inspector came and said, that's not right, and gave them a citation, well, maybe the building inspector was wrong to give them the citation. So if that had been the case, then you would appeal to us, we'd look at the ordinance and say, yeah, the building inspector like read the ordinance wrong, or, you know, measured this wrong, or whatever it is, and then we'd be able to give relief. That's why there's the mechanism. But the mistake that you're complaining about wasn't that the building inspector made a mistake in giving you the citation, it was that the building inspector made a mistake in telling you that you didn't need a
Possibly.
permit.
We weren't there, so I don't
Right.
want to, we weren't there. So I don't want to,
Well, I do have a witness.
okay.
And he was there and he
okay.
heard it.
But I guess what I'm saying though is,
We can't.
regardless of that fact, I don't think that there's not a there doesn't seem to be any dispute now that the zoning ordinance does not allow an 8-foot fence in that location. The question, or the concern is really what we can do, given that he's given a citation for this fence, but the fence is not allowed by the zoning ordinance. Like, it's not like he read the zoning ordinance wrong when he wrote the citation. And so I just don't think there's anything that we can really do in this instance.
And I think you should talk to your fence company, because I think it's an obligation of a company that installs things like fences, and every town has their own rules and regulations for fences. And I only dealt with 3 of them when I had my fencing installed, but they all knew the regulations for East Hampton, because I was mistaken on one, and they all knew the correct regulation. And so I think you should take that up with your fence company also, that they misled you that you could have an 8-foot fence in that location.
No, they didn't mislead me. They told me to go to the building inspector and get a permit.
So they
So
knew you
they
needed
could
a
put the
permit,
fence
so...
up.
Okay, well...
So
I
that's
guess,
what I
guess
did.
what I think where Linda's going with this is that, like,
They shouldn't
you
have...
did your best, right? But they're the professionals, and so when you came back to them with an answer that should have put up red flags for them, they took you at your word instead of following up, which as professionals, they probably should have known they needed to do.
So then when my brother came in for his permit, because the people who are doing the work on his house said go in and get a building permit, so he's having work done to his house. When it's done, building inspector's gonna come over and look at it and say, what? You did the wrong thing?
Well, I think what Linda is more saying is that when you said, I asked the building inspector, he said I didn't need a permit, that the fence company should have said, no, you really do need a permit, go back and get a permit. I mean, I think that's what you were sort of
Well, they were
suggesting. that fence-
believing the town inspector.
Well, the height, I'm talking about the height. I'm talking about the height.
I'm talking
We don't
about the
allow
entire
8-foot
Or the 8
fen-
foot- right.
That's
Either-
something that, to me, a professional should have known that you could not have an 8-foot fence in your side yard.
I guess what we're saying is that rather than simply taking you, who, I mean, this is like, why should you be expected to be the expert on the zoning ordinance in East Hampton about fences, that they should have done their independent research before they took your money and put a fence up, I think is.
Because if
And-
they put up a 6-foot fence, all you would have had to go retroactively is get the permit. And I'm sure you would have gotten the permit.
That's
The
what I
prob-
went in there
No,
for.
but the problem is the height of the fence. You cannot have an 8-foot fence.
Right.
Okay,
And
but
you're
I
in-
was told it was okay. After I asked about a
Right.
permit, I was told, no, I didn't
Okay,
need
well, your
one.
fence company should have known also that they could
Well,
not...
then, you know what? There's somebody else in East Hampton, this gray-haired man with rimmed glasses, that asked about his daughter's fence. They're gonna put a fence up by the electric company, and he didn't need a permit either.
Okay,
I think though I mean, we could stay here all night, and I don't know that it really, like, you're probably, from what I know of Linda, you're probably unlikely to convince her to change her mind. I believe you. I do. But unfortunately, like, I don't think that means that we can help you in the way that you're looking for. So I guess I just want to move the conversation past, I know for you it's like really important, like, that we don't say like, yes, he gave you bad information, but like, I'm willing to say like, he gave you bad
well, we
information.
weren't there, and I don't think it's fair for us to say that.
I'm not speaking for the board, I'm speaking for
Okay,
myself.
as long as you're speaking for yourself only.
Like, unfortunately, I don't think, like, if his mistake was in the advice that he gave you, not in the citation that he issued, I don't think that we, in reviewing his citation, have the authority to overturn his citation. And that sucks, but I just don't, like, we just don't have that authority, and, I'm sure there are people in town who think that we are on this board because we just want to, like, exercise power and that we don't really care about the rules, but the reality is that we're on this board because we're trying really hard to have things be, you know, like, consistent and fair, and we want to, you know, like, help in some small way to make this city run, and we don't want to be grabbing power that isn't really ours, because then, you know, people could think like we play favorites, and it's just really important to us that we follow the rules even when we don't necessarily agree with the way that they apply. And so, you know, each of us is guided by our conscience in doing that, but I think we can all agree that the citation that the building inspector issued was technically correct with the zoning ordinance, and that there's no mechanism in the zoning ordinance for us to give you permission to have an 8-foot fence in that location.
Okay, I think, all right, there's someone else in the audience who'd like to speak.
Multiple
Wait.
times there's questions. right?
If you could identify yourself for the record, but also come up to the podium, that would be great.
Yeah, Forrest Abild,
What's your name?
Forrest, F-O-R-R-E-S-T. Abild, A-B-I-L-D,
And your address?
144 Strong Street.
Thank you.
Finally have some time to start attending some meetings and maybe get a little involved in what goes on in town instead of just
We've got an
reading it in
open
the
seat.
newspaper. Pardon?
We've got an open seat on the board. Sorry.
The couple questions. I mean, for this lady to, she took the effort, went to the building inspector, and if he told her you don't need it, you already have a fence. It's not like we're making something new. You have a fence. You want to replace a section of the fence. That a fence company happens to have a section of that fence that's adequate for what you had in mind in stock. That's perfectly normal. You know, I wouldn't be suspicious of that at all.
No, but I think, I'm just trying to find reasons.
It's just that the feeling I'm getting from just the conversations that have been going on, it's kind of like, it's absurd that they would have had fence ready.
No.
We must have ordered it before.
I really wish we could like get off of this because I don't think that's the
Okay.
important part.
That
But
if assuming that they did go and talk to the building inspector, and if he said no, and then he said, shoot, you know, I don't know how he did
Well,
that.
see,
He's
we
gotta
weren't
have a
there
permit.
that day.
Wait, but
and
I
it
don't
could
think-
be
wait.
because-
But how
Molly, can I?
Maggie, but I just think that like it's not helpful because we aren't.
Okay, Maggie, I agree, but we weren't there that day. We don't know what distractions were going on in the
But
office.
that's beside the point.
beside
but like
the
if
point-
you're gonna argue it, then it's gonna feel like it's relevant, and
No,
it's beside
no,
the point.
no. But my position is that I cannot overturn the decision of the building official, period.
Right, but that's a different.
Well, that's the only decision we have on our agenda tonight.
Right.
Is we are going to uphold or overturn the decision of the building official.
But I think what he's asking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what he's saying is like that seems really unfair.
Right, isn't there a mechanism? I
And-
mean, if, sorry, I didn't
So
mean to cut you off.
Oh no, and I think that the mechanism is probably to complain, I don't know, to the mayor or like to go through, because essentially what your complaint is that he did a bad job of doing his job when you went to
He
talk
did
to
a
him.
very bad job of doing
Right.
his job.
So we
I
don't,
mean, he should have known when I said
Right.
what kind of
And-
fence I was putting up. He
Right.
should have immediately said to me, that's not allowed in East Hampton.
Right.
You can't have it. You can put up a 6,
So-
but you can't put up the 8.
so that is like essentially a complaint about like the quality of customer service that he is providing, which like his boss, I guess, is the mayor. So that would be the person that you complain to. Our like, I don't know, like we don't supervise the building inspector. All we are is we are like the backstop, and we're separate. Like, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because if you had a building inspector who was playing favorites and like issuing, you know, letting people have permits that they weren't really allowed to have, or not letting people have permits that they were allowed to have, you'd want like a separate body to be able to have like a neighbor who wanted to complain about, you know, the permit that he wasn't supposed to issue that he issued, or the person who applied for a permit that they should have been able to get. Like, you want to have a separate board that's able to say, yeah, the building inspector didn't follow the rules on that one, you get to have that permit, or yeah, the building inspector didn't follow the rules on that permit should not have been issued. And that's our role, and that's like pretty much like the limit of our role for supervising the building
But he
inspector.
wasn't issuing permits. He said we didn't need any.
Right, but what,
Okay.
That's
I
not
don't-
what the
okay,
zoning
Maggie.
board can't, they can only arbitrate if something was done in violation of what the codes are.
exactly. So like he issued you a citation, and that's what you're
why I'm
appealing.
appealing it.
Right, but the citation itself, the citation might feel very unfair because of the advice that he gave you.
Well, I'm gonna find out who this other man is, and if he puts up a fence.
And you
in
should,
his
and I'm not
daughter's yard
suggesting that you
without a
shouldn't
permit,
complain to the
He should be
mayor.
in the same position that I'm in.
And I'm sure he will be.
And we would not argue with that. But I guess what I'm saying is like,
Okay, can we draw this to a close? We're not getting anywhere.
No, I think you're making progress. You're explaining it now, I understand better how this works.
Yeah, I
You
know, but my
and it-
problem
it's-
is
it's
who's
like-
gonna
Right,
pay the bill to
right,
to have that fence taken down?
You are.
Or
yeah.
Yeah, but there's gotta be a
me.
cease
Where am I
and,
gonna get the money?
Linda, just,
One at a time.
No,
it's not helpful. It's
No,
not
Maggie,
helpful.
because, yes, it is
No.
helpful. I'm being truthful. I'm trying to be truthful.
But what you're being truthful about has nothing to do with our power to make this decision.
I agree, but I think a lot of your discussion has nothing to do with this decision either.
Well, I'm
I
trying
think-
to help them understand why we're
But see,
limited
you're
in our
taking
decision.
sides in a
No,
in a decision that you weren't part of, and
well,
it sounds like this has to go back to the mayor in any event, then you
No.
don't have the authority to make a decision.
we have
We
the
have the
authority
authority
to
to make a
decide that the
decision.
we have an authority to make a decision about the citation, because the citation is what's been appealed to us. So a citation can be appealed to us because a citation has to follow the rules. And we can look at the rules and determine whether the citation followed the rules. Now, if the citation like technically follows the rule, but you feel like there's been something unfair because of like other extraneous events happening, then you can go to the mayor and say, look, the city of East Hampton should pay for my fence to be removed, or the city of East Hampton, should make it right because the building inspector didn't do his job. But that's a completely sort of separate avenue of
we
trying to
can't
get redress, and that's not something that we couldn't order, even if we all agreed, we couldn't order the city to pay to take down your fence, but we also don't have authority to we don't have the authority to overturn the building inspector because the citation followed the rules.
I think that if we want to continue on this vein, we should have the building official here to explain what happened in the room that day.
But I don't think it's
But
necessary because
see,
we're
I
going to
don't
vote.
think we want to go that
because
route.
we're gonna
So I
vote-
think we need a
Right.
vote.
I think that's fine.
Well, he's just gonna deny it. He's gonna say, I don't
Okay.
remember, because that's what he
Well,
told me when he.
and so you're
brought
asking us
But
to
even if
take one person's word
Well,
over
we
another,
don't
that's
need
not
to.
our job.
But we don't need
Witness
to.
But
here.
you're trying to, Maggie.
No,
No.
it's not.
I think you
No, I'm
are.
really not. But I think we can word our decision in a way that doesn't cause anybody on this board to have to agree
All
to
right,
a
well,
series
what's
of
my
facts they
next
don't
recourse?
agree
Okay,
with.
would you like to, I'd like to.
Because I can already tell that you're gonna vote against me.
I am.
So,
We are.
I can tell. There's no doubt in my mind.
But
I wasn't a
but
teacher for 36
as a-
years without
as a-
knowing what people
but as
are
a-
thinking.
I
But
try
as
to
a
be
board-
very upfront and truthful, Mia.
But as a board,
Right, well,
as-
so do I.
as a board, and I think Linda agrees with this too, as a board, I think we can unanimously say the reason that we're voting to uphold, we're going to vote to uphold the citation issued by the building inspector is unrelated to any advice that he may or may not have given prior to the fence going up. That the reason that we're going to vote to uphold the citation is because when you look at the zoning ordinance, an 8-foot fence is
have
not
any
permitted
choice.
there, and we have no authority to permit an 8-foot fence there.
All right,
Okay,
so what's my, okay, you're gonna vote no. I have to take
And
it
let's
down.
take a vote and then.
I
and
want to
then
know what my next recourse is, to call him a liar, and to see
Call-
how he
call
does
the mayor's
not
office.
get re-elected or reappointed to his
Call the
position.
mayor's office.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely the mayor's office. That is your next recourse.
Yeah.
The mayor is his boss.
Because I don't like being lied to, and he had every opportunity to tell me, you can't do an 8, you have to do a 6. And he said I didn't need a permit, and then when that man came in and there was only 3 people in the office, Joe, my brother, and myself, this man came in, says, excuse me for a minute, asked his question if I needed a permit for a fence, and Joe said, no. So 2 people asking for 2 permits for a fence for each one of us,
And I think
and it was no twice.
You
You
need
should
to go to
definitely
the mayor's
go to
office.
the mayor's office, 'cause the
Okay, I'd
mayor's
like to have a
responsible.
motion to close this public hearing.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Well,
second.
actually, before we do that, just to
Are there any
is there
other
anybody
people-
else who wanted to
Meg,
talk on this
Can I
matter?
run the meeting, please?
Yes, sorry. We have to ask that question.
Well, I know, but is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Just want to say thank you for the
Okay.
opportunity to speak.
Now, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Do I have a motion on the application from Bronny Prosaic Harrison of 8 Ballard Street.
Yes, I will move, let's see, I need to, is this the situation where we have to like, we want the yes to be, we vote,
Either
wait, we vote no,
to vote to
Vote to uphold.
uphold
we vote
is-
to uphold, okay, got it. So I move that we uphold the citation issued by the building inspector relative to the 8-foot-high fence at the property located at 8 Ballard Street, as a fence of that height is not allowed pursuant to 6.9 of the East Hampton zoning ordinance.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, I think you need to go to the mayor, I'm
I
sorry.
have my answer, thank you. I don't like being lied to by the building inspector. Or he should learn how to do his job and do it right.
All right.
Okay, now let's go back to a few minor items that were on the agenda. We have a new official zoning map for the town of East Hampton. And there's an electronic version on our website. There's an application in front of the planning board for site plan approval. There was a decision from the planning board for site plan approval for off the map, 84 Cottage Street,
Oh, yeah, they're moving, they moved.
and for Frederick Friedor of 152 Northampton Street, for a beauty barbershop, hair salon, or a tanning salon. I got reappointed to the ZBA. How exciting. John got reappointed to the ZBA. How excited. We also have a referral from the planning board for 1 Love Street for a prospective tenant. It's the future home of Design House 413 LLC at the corner of Love Street and Terrace View. If anyone would like to see the map, we have that.
That's for the planning board.
Yep, that's from the planning board. And the only, I think, other item that we have is going back to farm animals.
Oh, yeah.
Chickens, and I thought about this today. And do you think that the health director would write the ZBA, a letter that we can keep in our file? Because I agree with her comments that if we don't have the special permit, people who have chickens won't realize how serious the city of East Hampton is about making sure they're kept in a clean and healthy environment. So by making them come before us, it sort of makes sense. But I think by having the special permit application, we're sort of giving the neighbors the opinion that if they object, we're going to say no,
I
which
see.
isn't the case.
Right.
So I'm wondering if Jackie Duda would just write us a short memo explaining, thanking us maybe for keeping the special permit so that we can emphasize the
It's a
importance.
really hard decision to keep it.
But that she, in her experience, talk about her experience, has not had a bad experience with odor and noise, etc. Whatever she feels comfortable writing that's truthful. That we can keep that on our file so the next time we have a chicken application, we can bring that out and explain to the neighbors and the applicant while they're going through this process. Does that sound like a viable solution to our chicken problem?
We could certainly ask.
I'll relay the message to her.
Yeah, I mean,
She was willing to come to this meeting, but because of all the other items on the agenda, I said that the board was probably not going to deal with the issue and they'd probably deal with it in January.
But I think
Okay,
that
so-
Linda's point, though, might be, like, it might be, from a long-term perspective, it might be better to have something in writing.
Right.
But I guess she's willing to come to the January meeting.
Okay.
If there's a discussion.
Yeah, I would
that
love
wants
that,
to
but that's
happen.
what I have in
But-
mind, is having
yeah.
something for our records. about chickens in East Hampton and her experience as the enforcer of the chicken regulations.
Right, like it might be helpful, for example, if she said, like, yeah, just like something about like, I've inspected, many people keeping chickens, and what I found is that the people keeping chickens, like do X, Y, and Z, and the following have not been problems.
Noise,
Right.
odor.
But if she wants to come so that we can ask her in person, that would be great too, but it might be that she would rather just write something for us.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
To have something.
Because the other thing too is if we have something in writing, it's something that we can also hand to like successful applicants and say like, these are the, like this is also like the expectation on you to make sure that like these things don't happen. And the reason why we have the special permit is to make sure that the people who are, like that people aren't just gonna get chickens because, oh, they're cute. Like, oh, there's some chicks in the feed store, let's take 4 home today. And then suddenly they're like, wait, I have chickens and I don't know what to do with them.
My concern is for the neighbors who are
Right.
concerned about the noise and the odor. And I think a letter from her explaining her experience with noise and odor in chickens would be very helpful in us trying to explain to the neighbors that they are
yeah.
not noisy and they're not smelly, and if they're maintained, and it's her job to maintain.
Right. Yeah, actually, and having maybe having a letter and being able to offer a copy to any neighbors who are concerned, because the letter would also have her contact information, and then they would know, like, this is the person to, this is the person to
Oh,
call
that's fine.
if it seems like these things are happening that shouldn't
Yeah, I
happen.
think that'd be
I
helpful.
think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want to
no-
ask her to come to the January meeting as well?
Yes,
or-
yeah. Okay, there are no more items on the agenda. We have some people in the audience. Would you like to say anything, or are you just visiting?
You don't want to hear what's on that.
Okay.
No, but I want to say something. I'm being Schumann from 76.
Could you actually
stand up there?
This thing just started making noise, and I can't hear anything.
I really just stated at the end of the meeting. I'm Pam Schumann from 76 Clark Street. My husband Harry on the planning board. I just wanted to commend Margaret tonight for really listening to that neighbor who had a problem with her fence. Because regardless of whether it's a 8 feet restriction or whatever it is, you just didn't shut her down and tell her you need to go do other things. You really listened to her, and you found some other alternative solutions for her to proceed to try to resolve this through the mayor or whatever. And you really did a good job of explaining what you could do and what you couldn't do. And you did a great job. And I wanted to commend you on that. That was my comment.
I'm all embarrassed. Thank you for coming. It's like,
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
yes.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
Hi. Thanks, Tony.